You're listening to the Autism Weekly podcast. Each week, we share community voices and bring light to stories that increase awareness, acceptance, equity, access, and inclusion. If you haven't already, subscribe to join the Autism Weekly family. I'm your host, Jeff Skibitsky. This week, we're discussing the power of listening and mentorship programs through the Making Mentors program. This initiative pairs autistic college students with high school students to foster connection, growth, and empowerment. Joining us are Kristen Gillespie Lynch, T. Marco, Louis Rotondo, and Rita Strickland to share how mentorship and peer support are transforming the autistic community. Well, I'm very excited to welcome all of you. This will be a wonderful topic, and I hope to learn a lot from each and every one of you. So Kristen, can you give us a background of what Making Mentors program is and what services are being provided?
Exactly. So Making Mentors is a mentorship program through which autistic college students at CUNY and NYU mentor autistic high school students in New York. And here you're going to be hearing from Louis. Louis, do you want to say what your role is?
Yes, I'm coordinator for the Making Mentors program, so I have the opportunity of working with the mentors that service predominantly New York, but work with NYU as well.
Awesome. And Rita?
I'm the assistant coordinator. I just really enjoy working with my kids. So.
And T?
I am one of the college mentors, and I've been with this program pretty much since its conception. So definitely gotten to become very well acquainted with these people.
And as you can see, just from the people present here, we have a really, really strong team that's very neurodiversity affirming, and we all communicate very effectively together and learn from one another. But Making Mentors has its start earlier in development with younger kids. So it was started by Dr. Wendy Martin, who's the PI or principal investigator of Making Mentors, so the primary leader of the project. And Wendy Martin had started a program for younger kids on the spectrum where they did maker clubs. So they did maker activities together to learn STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math concepts. And this was found to be effective for the autistic students and the non-autistic students in a quasi-experimental design, meaning that participating in the program led to improvements, but they weren't randomized to different conditions. And so they found this to be a really exciting foundation, and they wanted to move older in development. So they started working with NYU mentors, and they started to collaborate with Christy Patton on a pilot study with just NYU mentors working with autistic high school students in New York. And that also showed initial evidence that it was beneficial, although it was, again, quasi-experimental. And so then they reached out to me because they wanted to diversify the mentors. And so they wanted to have mentors that had different life experiences. So they wanted to include CUNY, because CUNY is one of the most diverse institutions in the entire country, if not the most diverse, and also has a lot of autistic students. And I also had a mentorship program that was participatory, meaning that autistic students were in leadership roles within it, called Project Reach at the time. So they wanted to draw from Project Reach. So this program builds from Wendy's early work and from Project Reach, and is a collaboration across NYU and CUNY. And the goal of the program is to help mentors develop skills that will help them get jobs, because they're doing a job as mentors, including self-advocacy skills and self-regulation skills.
I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear what drove the idea of increasing mentorship, why that's important to each of you, and what you think that was missing to develop that program initially. And maybe we can start with you, Rita, and you can give us a little bit of a background of where that passion came from.
My passion actually comes from my kids. I'm a mother with two neurodivergent kids, and my oldest one is autistic. And there weren't a lot of resources for him going through the school system, especially peer-related ones. So it left him ostracized a lot from his peers, and there was a lot of ableism that was going on from the teachers, with the assumption of things that he couldn't do, ones that he was perfectly capable of doing. So a lot of my passion stems from my kids.
Okay, and if I'm correct, your children are older now, so they've gone through quite a bit of the experience of their educational system, right?
Yes, my oldest did a year in college already, and my youngest is getting ready to go to high school. So a lot of
Okay.
transitioning going on over here.
Yeah, and a wealth of experience, I'd imagine, is that the best teacher is the one that experiences whatever it is that those are going through. And that's either self-advocacy, that's going to be the parent, that's going to be people who can really teach and help us to understand that experience. And Lewis, what brought you into the program, into the goals, the aspirations?
In college, I had the opportunity to shadow somebody and attend classes with someone who, as a scribe, and that kind of led me into the field of developmental disabilities, working in group homes and residential settings. And through that pathway, I discovered that I myself am neurodivergent and also had a lot of social difficulties when I was growing up. So in that, I developed a passion to help those that I could benefit from my background in counseling and in psychology, and with the student base that I work with, helping them overcome obstacles, and more importantly, being a sense of growth and compassion and looking at strength-based approaches with them as a counselor and a therapist. So that's where I am.
I think that's amazing. And if you can give me a little bit of a better understanding of, so you said that you went through the experience of being on the service end, and that helped you to realize some of the historical components that maybe you didn't really, you weren't fully aware of at the time, and maybe it's become a little bit more available. So what were those pieces? What did you feel like maybe you either missed out on, or that the society was not providing you at that time, or ways that people were interacting with you that might have been not necessarily the best way to be able to empower you?
I think that not much was known as I was growing up, because during the time I was in school, not much was known about anything in regards to neurodivergent, and it wasn't really something that was celebrated. It was something that was kind of, I want to say, not understood, and therefore people don't know how to react or how to service those, or open a pathway for people that identify as neurodivergent on how to learn. I myself, I'm more of a visual learner than auditory, and looking at different teaching strategies and techniques in school systems, maybe kinesthetic and visual learning isn't really appreciated as much as solely auditory learning, and that kind of was a deficiency for me personally.
Hmm.
I myself, as a teacher, had the opportunity to be mentored by a lot of people, Kristen being one of them, and in learning from them and seeing their approach and how they're able to reach a broad majority of students, it enabled me to develop a passion for teaching and helping those by engaging them in multiple different ways of teaching and pedagogical experiences that would enhance their learning experience in a productive and inclusive learning environment.
Everything you just described there sounds like it would be beneficial for somebody who's neurotypical and who's neurodiverse. Is that, oftentimes what I'm learning is that some of the same concepts, same principles are ones that we should all be kind of thinking through for everybody. So T, you obviously have a passion in this as well. And I think that part of what makes the experience of your entire group is that everybody has a unique perspective that's coming in. Can you tell us about what brought you into the program?
Um, so it's funny because a couple months before I joined Making Mentors, I had actually gotten evaluated and diagnosed at 19 years old. And so I got an email about this from Kristen about this program, and I thought, I've never done this before. I have no idea what to expect, but this seems cool. Um, so I wish I could say it was like, oh, like I always knew it's what I wanted to do, but I just kind of thought, why not take the jump and do it, try it out, and to this day, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. It's really opened up a lot of doors for me in areas that I never even considered. And looking back on it, as because after I got the diagnosis, I was able to much better reflect on my experiences living with autism as someone who's undiagnosed in an education system, especially in honors classes where the expectations are so much higher. And just reflecting and realizing that if I were to have seen someone like me who could share in these kind of grievances and these experiences, how much that would have benefited me going forward, especially from that transition from high school to college. Because
Hmm.
obviously, to someone that's never been in that position before, it's very, very intimidating. So I think it kind of bridges the gap between, you know, understanding how that process is going to go, what, like, as a neurodivergent person, as an autistic person, and how to kind of get support systems from, like, through that, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. And more often than not, what I'm finding is that people who are either entering into the field or who are out there advocating is that it's that personal experience that's driving that motivation. It's trying to figure out where my passion is and going full speed into trying to figure out how to empower others around you. And oftentimes, and I think both T and Lewis, you both kind of clarified that you didn't necessarily jump into knowing that this was my experience in the past. This is why I got into it until you started learning about others and kind of hearing their stories. I think that listening part is so important and something oftentimes we don't do very well. So kudos to both of you all for that self-exploration, which I think comes from that learning opportunity of listening and really hearing the perspectives of others. And Kristen, tell me how you play a role within the program and what it is that that brought you to Making Mentors.
So I started out as a caregiver for non-speaking kids on the spectrum. And the group home that I worked in, I learned after starting to work there and really getting attached to the kids, was considered the end of the road in terms of group homes. So there wasn't a lot of supports for the people who lived there. And I could see a lot of potential in their eyes, but they weren't able to express that a lot of times, as they had to rely on very simplified picture-based schedules. And so then I started working with two identical twins who were minimally speaking, and they were similarly limited in terms of their communication supports. So it was probably at a similar point in history as Lewis is referring to, when people didn't know much about autism. So people would ask what was going on, and I'd say that they were autistic, and they'd say they're artistic, because they wouldn't, or they'd tell them, like, pay attention to your mom, because they would feel like they had some understanding of their situation without really understanding their situation. So I encountered a lot of stigma towards them and a lot of lack of supports and people who were making decisions who didn't really know how to actually support them. And so I went back to school and got a master's, and then I got a PhD. And my overall goal throughout this whole process was to develop supports that actually help people and that help address stigma and that empower autistic people to take on leadership roles. And so that's one of the really exciting things about Making Mentors.
That key word that you said is empowering people to be leaders. I think that that's something that I applaud. I think it's oftentimes is that we don't give people the benefit of the doubt, and we expect that, okay, well, all you can be is a follower, a participant, instead of giving you the opportunity to lead and develop and to kind of draw the path of where we should be going. So this program, and Rita, maybe you can give me a better understanding of the Making Mentors program, but a lot of services for autistics is often focused on early intervention, focused on being able to service a very specific population. There aren't a lot of people focused on being able to help those that maybe are looking to better understand their way of engaging with others, or better understanding or teaching the society around them how to empower autistic individuals. And oftentimes those are those who probably can be leaders very easily, have so many wonderful skills that oftentimes are neglected or not looked at or not empowered. The program itself, who is it set up for? Is there a particular audience that you're saying, you know, for Making Mentors, this is who we're trying to be able to work with. This is the area where we specialize.
I think it's in two parts because it's set up for both our mentors and our mentees, both our college students we work on certain challenges with, and both of our high school students we work on different challenges with. Sometimes they mesh. We do focus on leadership skills, public speaking, identity, owning their identity. We do that with both our college and our high school kids, but we really focus on job opportunities too, and kind of walk our college students through the process of how to maintain a job and get a job. And it's important because a lot of times, you know, many people don't see success past high school for autistic adolescent children. And I've seen that firsthand. And it's important, you know, in their next steps of life to know that they can go much further than that. And that's one of the main things we focus in making mentors for both our mentors and our mentees. So I would say there's just big aspects for both the mentor and the mentee. They both are getting a lot out of the program as far as that goes.
No, and if those are the goals, it sounds like that's exactly what's happening, is that everybody has a chance to learn, develop, and enhance their skill set throughout, which kind of makes for a nice situation, is that, if you're involved in the program, you are going to come out better in some respect in skill building. And it's something that if I'm going to go and join in any program that's out there for me, is that I want to make sure that I'm getting something out of it, that I have a way to be able to grow personally. And it sounds like you're providing that opportunity. Now, all those skills that you mentioned, Rita, are complex skills. They're ones that I'm still developing, and I've been in my career for many years. It's ones that will constantly have growth. So, see, when you're working with mentors and mentees, how is it, and what strategies are you using to help people to be able to kind of attach to some of these skills and be able to kind of understand them and conceptualize them?
I think that's a good question, actually. Um, I think a lot of it comes from just seeing it modeled. I think because Lewis pointed out the visual learning aspect, and I feel like that's something that hits home for a lot of our mentors and mentees. And I think it really comes down to setting that example and setting the expectations of how to do something, how to go about it. And ultimately, my takeaway from the program is always just like do the best you can. Always do the best you can, even if it feels impossible. And I think having that mindset kind of encourages the people working around you to be like, you know what? Like, I don't know how to build, for example, one of the activities that a group was doing was bookbinding. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know how to do bookbinding, but that sounds super fun and cool. Why not do that? So I think kind of encouraging each other to just step outside of our comfort zones and to just attack it and do whatever you want to do because why not? Pretty much.
Yeah. No, and I think that we all learn from small failures. I think that if you're not putting yourself in a place where occasionally you fail, is that you're not going to be able to grow or learn that next step or that next opportunity. Um, Lewis, it's one of the things that that comes to mind as even as T was going through and explaining, what some of the goals and strategies that you're looking at, and whether it's modeling, whether it's being able to kind of work side by side and to be able to kind of do that show and tell sort of, or kind of work through some basic skill buildings. Each person learns differently. Each person leads differently. So, what role does listening and understanding the perspective that somebody is coming in and respecting somebody's approach to how they're going to learning, how does that foster successful relationships within the program? How does that really enhance the quality of what people are receiving?
Good question, because I like to say this thing about failure. If you spell out the word fail, F-A-I-L, you could realign it in your mind as your first attempt in learning, F-A-I-L, right?
Ah,
So that indicates
that's
that
awesome.
failure just is a bridge to success eventually, if you believe it to be that, instead of an actual point where you stop. And
I'll
piggybacking
steal that,
on
but I'll give you credit.
piggybacking on what Rita and T said, this process I feel like validates experiences, right? Because we have the mentors who are in a different position than the mentees, right? They've already went through high school, they've went through that, they've worked through that, they've overcome their challenges, they found what works for them, and they've used it and helped, and it's helped them, become more successful moving forward and learn from their mistakes or by their differences, so to speak. The mentorship program we have also helps them build trust with one another, right? When you have a non-judgmental environment that people are working in, and one that's authentic, that shows care and true presence and active listening, as Jeffrey, you said before, it encourages each person to open up. And in doing that
Hmm.
and having that reciprocal communication, you're going to help promote clarity, right? You're going to avoid assumptions. You're going to have clear communication. You're going to reduce misunderstandings. You're going to feel more comfortable around that person. And in neurodiverse interactions, this is really beneficial in any interaction, but more so with neurodiverse interactions, where you being an individual that identifies as autistic or neurodiverse, you're now going to encourage a growth mindset where you feel as if you can come out with more stuff and you can have deeper conversations, and you become empowered in your attempts and your desire to talk to somebody that truly understands you. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's what a lot of the students kind of gain from this, both mentors, mentees, and I even myself would say as a coordinator. One of the things that Rita and I have often discussed is how we get clarity from certain things and we obtain deeper understanding, how we learn to trust each other based on what we see from our students. And that's truly the reverberation of the beauty of the program. And T is one of our veteran mentors. So she's being humble, but she's one of the best people to help create that experience for not only the mentees, but also the mentors in the program as a veteran.
That means that you all are doing something right, is that if you're walking away where even as the leadership of the program is on a daily basis, you're learning, you're growing, and you're learning from those that supposedly are the ones that are supposed to be learning from you. That reciprocal relationship is amazing to see. And if we're all doing that all the time, there's unlimited growth that we can all experience. But even as you were describing a lot of that is I don't, and I've heard a lot of this authenticity from being very important within autistics. But in order to be authentic, is that you have to be self-aware. You have to be able to self-advocate. You have to be able to help other people know how to communicate with you. So making mentors encourages this. I know through your program is that self-advocacy is super important, but it has to be a taught skill. I can't always self-advocate for myself at times because I don't feel super confident in environments where I might feel additional pressure or I might not feel a part of the group. So how do you go about, and Kristen, maybe you can give us some guidance on this, but how do you go about encouraging and teaching self-advocacy amongst the participants? So Kristen, you had mentioned the self-advocacy skills, and those are so complicated.
So teaching self-advocacy is really challenging and really important because there's work showing that autistic students often don't play a role in their IEP planning. So they often enter college without experience of self-advocating and then are called upon to self-advocate in college. And they struggle to navigate this transition into a position when they're expected to self-advocate when people have been advocating for them. And so for a while, there weren't really a lot of self-advocacy supports at all. And now there are supports. So sometimes when you start to teach people about self-advocacy, they're like, hey, I already know that. And one thing we've learned is that you can talk all you want at people about self-advocacy and they'll say, I already know that, or that's boring, which is valid. And the real way to teach people self-advocacy is to give them opportunities to self-advocate. And the most overlooked form of self-advocacy for people with disabilities is leadership. And so you want to make programs where people can step into leadership roles. And often this starts out in a kind of aspirational way where you're like, hey, autistic people are going to be leaders in this program. And there might be like a long silence that might extend over a lot of time where people don't feel comfortable stepping into that role. And one key thing that helps people step into that role is neurodivergent leaders like Lewis and T. And seeing people in those roles helps people envision that they can also become leaders. And so that's the central goal of making mentors, is to show autistic people and otherwise neurodivergent people in leadership roles so that the mentees can be like, hey, I could become a mentor. I could go to college. I belong in these settings. And it takes time. So the grant for this was participatory. We're like, hey, autistic students are going to lead all of these things. And it really took a long time for us to be in a position where autistic students really are leading training development, curriculum development, research development, because you have to make the spaces and the intention and the processes for people to step into leadership and self-advocacy.
Yeah, and I mean, even with the idea of leadership, where you all are talking at that transition from high school into collegiate areas, or even in the college level, um, for me, is that leadership, that advocacy, is kind of the middle of one's experience. Is that it's not the tail end, because we all are going to continue to grow and become better leaders as life goes on. But these are skills that probably need to be taught way earlier in somebody's lifespan, maybe in a different way, maybe in a different context, but need to be taught that way so that everybody has that opportunity to be able to grow those skills over time and enhance them rather than playing catch up. And Rita, you have an older son. I mean, when you think back to his opportunities as he was a child going through the collegiate experience, do you feel like, everybody was attuned to, we need to be able to create a leader at age 6, at age 10, at age 14? Or was it really just later in life that people started saying, you know what, we need to start creating a new experience?
I will tell you from personal experience, both of my kids are neurodivergent, and what they're 5 years apart. So what was available to my son was much less than what was available to my daughter. And that in of itself is very big when it comes to self-advocacy, because there wasn't a lot available or a lot given to us to teach my son to self-advocate for himself, because it wasn't there. And
Hmm.
there wasn't, now there's rules that you can show them, like, these are the things you're entitled to by law. Chancellor's rules and regulations, all of those things are available now. But when he was younger, they were not available to us as parents, to him as a student in general. So it did come much later for him. Whereas my daughter, it did start at an earlier time. For my son, it didn't start till middle school. And for
Hmm.
him, with self-advocacy, it really started with me having him lead his own IEP meetings. I started that at an early age. So he was in on every single IEP meeting. Even if he didn't speak up right away, he knew what was going on. He knew what he needed. And I allowed that room, that's what they need. They need that room to express themselves. And that's an important thing. And it shows the teachers too that they are perfectly capable of making decisions in the situation. And a lot of times that is very much overlooked. The teachers look for the parents, or the teachers tell us, like, this is what we think your son needs. And the student is glossed over completely. So they really need
Hmm.
that space. And in the beginning, it's, yeah, as parents, we need to self-advocate for our kids, but slowly we should also be bringing them into these conversations. And that's how they
Absolutely.
do learn this self-advocacy at an early age.
Yeah. No, and I mean, when I think about just a neurotypical experience, if you think of that through grade school and middle school, high school, is that the problem solving, they automatically oftentimes include the child into it. Whenever there's a resolution, whenever there is something that needs to be a teachable moment, that child is a part of that. They're part of the decision making. They're part of the discussion. And we don't always provide that opportunity to those that are have a disability, a hidden disability, if they're neurodiverse. I mean, whatever it may be, we don't give them that same opportunity for those components. Um, T, I'd love to hear, because you've been a mentor, you've seen people go through this experience. I'd love to hear, what it is that's been, and maybe not most rewarding, because everything's got to be rewarding at some point because everybody's experiencing it differently. But tell me about some of the rewarding experiences that you've had on helping some of the mentees, or even rewarding for yourself as a mentor.
So my mentee this year, she started off super, super shy, super closed off, and it just, oh, I could cry just thinking about it, honestly. Seeing how far she's come and how her confidence has developed over 8 months. It's really incredible to see and to know that you took a direct role in that. Like that kind of really made me realize my passion for it. The first year was great too, don't get me wrong, but we were working in groups rather than individually, so I think that was like the like wow, like I'm really impacting someone. There was one time, it was so sweet. Oh my goodness. We were like, so her and we made this like huge diorama. Her thing was like she loved Katy Perry. So we got a bunch of like littlest pet shop figures and made a diorama of like one of the stages she performed on. And our main character was a pelican and we called her Katie Pelican, which was great. And I remember I was over at this table hot gluing and I called her over and the teacher said something to her and she just said, I need to go over to my friend right now. And that just, oof, my goodness, I'm gonna try not to cry. But yeah, that kind of really put it into perspective of like
Hmm.
what I've actually accomplished. And that's just the mentoring side of things. This program's given me so much confidence to just be who I am. When I like when I do internships, for example, I always make it clear that I am an autistic individual and I need accommodations. I'm not ashamed of it. And I think the program directly is to thank for that. I think if I wasn't in an environment with as much support as I've gotten, I would be much more ashamed about it than I am today. I'm around the same
Hmm.
age as Rita's son, so I can attest to the fact that the resources available were far and few, if not non-existent. Especially with it being such a taboo thing to discuss. I mean, even today, I tell people I'm autistic, they look at me like I'm incapable. They look at me like I'm not, you know what I mean, that I'm not a functioning human being, even though I'm, you know what I mean, even though I've paved my own way. And I think
Hmm.
tying this back to my mentee, I think kind of explaining that process to her because at the start of the year, her dad did not want to let her go to college. She didn't know if she wanted to go to college. And by the end of it, she wanted to. So that just like made it all worth it, really.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes these, and those don't even sound like small wins, but it's oftentimes those small wins, those small opportunities where it's like even kind of the introspective look of, wow, I just learned something about myself, or I just became a better person through this experience, or wow, I just saw something that I didn't think was going to happen 6 months ago. And all of a sudden, like it is when you describe the way that the voice was bound to say, I'm not just going to follow what you told me to do. I'm going to stand up and say, no, that I'm not ready. I don't want to do that right now. Or I'm not ready to do that. I've got other things on my priority list that I need to take care of. Being with my friend, is that those are skills that, I mean, when they happen, especially that first time when you see it, it's got to bring joy. It's got to bring that tear to your eye as far as like, wow, for so long, you've probably been taught to follow, to listen, and just to comply. And what I just saw right now is somebody who advocated and said, this is who I am, this is what I want to do right now, and wasn't just blindly following what others were expecting of them. Not it's not easy to get there. And running a program is really hard. And Lois, I'd love to hear from you because when you see something like this that starts out as research, the goal is that you have replications, you have opportunities for people to take these programs, build them at other universities, build them in other job settings. What are the challenges that you've come into as far as being able to direct these services or being able to grow them the way that you want to?
I'm gonna forward that question to Kristen if it's okay, because she's more
Yeah,
knowledgeable
absolutely.
regarding how we're gonna do that. But I just want to second on what T and Rita said. As T said, and as she kind of as they kind of acknowledged very well, is identity affirmation, right? So the identity affirmation that comes with that experience is so powerful, and more importantly, the information the mentors share and the real world applications of what the mentors show the mentees and what they see over the course of the experience is concrete. It's experience based, right? It speaks about what the mentor went through and what worked for them. And when a mentee hears that, a high school student hears that, they could rehearse it, right? They could try it. They could see if it works for them. They could practice it. It's an immediate learning, an immediate trying of something that maybe you haven't seen before. And most of the things that they're going through and most of the challenges they have are highly relevant. And the mentors know what they felt and know what they're thinking and know what's occurring. And that's the beauty and strength of the program. So with that, I'll forward your question to Kristen. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Kristen, maybe you can tell us about some of the challenges that you see, or that some of the hurdles that others might have to take on as far as building such a strong program like you guys are in the process of doing.
I think all of us can speak to challenges, but I'll speak to them as well. One of the challenges is the current political climate. So we're uncertain if this grant will be funded any day. And so we were presenting at a big autism conference, and a number of autism grants were just not funded anymore. And we were like, is our grant not funded? And in this type of context, we're working with students who are intersectionally marginalized, who may rely on this as their source of income, and also trying to build these pathways between high school and college where we want mentees to step up as mentors. This level of uncertainty is really, really, really damaging. Even though we've been able to communicate with the mentors and the schools about the level of uncertainty, and everyone's been really adaptable in an amazing way about dealing with it, it creates like a dark cloud that hangs over really exciting work. And so that's one key challenge. And then
I'd like to say real fast, Kristen, is that sentiment that you just provided there. I've heard that way too frequently right now, and it's something that I think a lot of people are experiencing, is the fear of us not being able to continue the growth that we've had, and being able to empower so many people to have leadership roles, to be able to work in the career that they want to be able to drive cars, to be able to do a variety of things because research dollars have stopped. So I did want to make sure that I definitely empathize with that. And it does create some job security, some opportunities for people to continue the research, is that you need to have the funding there to be able to learn more. So, but what are some of the other, I cut you off, but I want to hear some of the other challenges that you're running into.
So another key challenge is variations in support needs and mentors. So this is something that the research team, over the summer, we have these teams of mentors working on curriculum training and research. And the mentors in the research team have these really fascinating insights about foundational skills that they think mentors need to have, like responsibility and respect for differences, and skills that they could potentially be a little bit weakened to start with, and their own growth could be an area of like modeling for their mentee, like self-advocacy. And so one of the key challenges is that we have this incredible diversity of skills in our mentors as well as our mentees. And so developing ways to communicate effectively with such a diverse range of mentors is challenging. So like you might provide a rule to help mentors document their hours, and one mentor might interpret it very, very literally, and then you'd have to have a discussion about that. Or you might have mental health challenges among the mentors themselves. They might struggle with burnout, particularly in this current very uncertain climate, where they struggle to be present for the mentee. So the support needs and variations in those support needs in mentors is a big issue. I think another big issue is the culturally situatedness of mentorship programs. So in the first year of this program, we had a supervisor who was brilliant, but who was not culturally situated in Staten Island. And Staten Island is a very unique cultural context. And Louis and Rita together leading this program are dynamite. And part of the reason they're dynamite is because they understand the cultural context. They have networks with the people on the island. People trust them. And so to make a replicable model when so much of mentorship is culturally situated, I think is a big challenge. I know Rita also wanted to speak to challenges.
Yeah, Rita, what do you see as far as the challenges that are from your perspective?
I mean, challenges inside the program, as I'm working the program as a coordinator, a lot that does come up is mental health challenges, even speaking to the teachers at the high school I work at. Parents and teachers spend a lot of time getting their kids on the right track as far as school, addressing the neurological issues. And we forget all the psychological issues that come along with being autistic, being ostracized, from your own peers, and from the teachers thinking you're incapable of doing things, from the students that need less support, that are more aware of what's going on around them, feeling the need to hide their identity and want to camouflage into the rest of the world. And they don't want to admit that they're autistic, which is leading to depression and sometimes substance abuse problems. So there's a variety of all these mental health issues going on that are being overlooked, because parents and teachers sometimes feel it's more important that their kid is reading on the right level and doing math. And while all of those things are very important, it's not helpful if they're not doing it from a healthy mind. So I think that's one of my biggest challenges between both the mentors and the mentees, allowing them to address those issues and have a safe and comfortable space where they can discuss that these are problems that they're going through, because they're not always addressed and they're not always in a comfortable environment where they feel like they can explain, like, this is how I feel right now. And this program offers that. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the challenges that you were just describing, as far as those comorbidities with other mental health issues, I think that the environment that you all are creating, the skill sets that you all are empowering folks with, the chance to be able to learn and experience and become self-aware about who I want to be and my path to be able to get there. I think that that's how you actually take on that challenge of being able to reduce some of those other challenges that would occur, that would develop in regards to mental health issues. Is that if you don't feel comfortable in your environment, or you don't feel accepted, of course anxiety, depression are going to be there because you don't have a place to be you. So I think that what you all are doing is amazing, and it works on that. But there's always room to grow, and I think there's always things that are going to be on the horizon, or wish list items that you're going to want to prioritize at some point. And I'd love to hear from each of you, actually, just because I would imagine different perspectives are going to say, hey, you know what? I think that a mentor program, the next iteration should start looking at this. Or it would be even better if we could start to enhance these types of skills. But where do you see the future of mentorship programs, and where do you see some of the maybe advances that we should be looking forward to? And maybe I'll start with you, Rita, and we'll work through the room and hear all these different ideas of where we should be going.
so do you mean autistic mentorship programs or just mentorship programs in general?
You know what? Either way, I think that oftentimes what I'm learning is that when you make something autistic specific, is that we're all learning on how we
Mhm.
should be doing it for mentorships in general or in services in general. But if it's easier, I think maybe if we can focus on the autistics and identify those mentorship programs, and all learn from the fact that these are probably all generalizable to everybody.
Okay. I think going forward with the projects, I just love the fact that there's this opportunity for our students to see that there's more out there for them. And even though we teach college readiness, my son in particular decided to go into trade school. And I want that to be a possibility for them too, because school is not for everybody. And it's very hard sometimes when that environment causes anxiety for you to have other options. And if for it to be more than like, okay, I graduated high school and you have no next step. So, not just college readiness, but career readiness, trade school, something, but allow there to be multiple options for them.
I love that. I think that if we have that lifespan approach and be able to diversify what everybody has, different needs, different desires, and we're able to expand on that, that's the ultimate goal. I mean, we have to start somewhere, but that's the ultimate goal, is that we all get there. Lewis, what's on your wish list? Where does your utopic view bring you?
Oh, okay, here we go. Ideally, community, right? Community accepting autistic individuals and neurodivergent individuals. So having some kind of community-based program where employers understand and utilize a strength-based approach while selecting members that are autistic, that are neurodivergent, and instead of placing them in careers without training or understanding, put them in roles where they can empower themselves and teach them skills that they're going to use that enhance the skills they have, and promote the job force in one way or another. I think that would be my dream list. Also, having education tangible to everyone, and teachers enabling teachers for free to have access to resources that teach them how to be better people and better teachers, to teach a broad group of students many different strategies and engagement techniques, and having more neurodivergent autistic people discuss how they feel and reduce stigma. Yeah, these are my wish lists. I can keep going, but I think we don't have enough time. But
No, but I mean, even just the general concept of being able to kind of empower the community around us to actually be a part of that experience. I
exactly.
think that sometimes we don't do because we're scared, because we don't know how. And I think that what you're describing is a great next step. How about you, T?
I think Like, in terms of a wish list, I think the most important thing to me, and I think the motivating factor for me being as involved in this program as I am, I think we just need to stop treating autism like a separate entity. I think that mental health professionals present in schools, not necessarily professional, but people such as counselors or in school therapists, if that's a thing, but having them trained to understand how an autistic mind can work. There's a lot of, oh, just breathe, just journal, just do this, do that. But it's like, this is to cover a general audience, and autistic people have very individualized needs and wants. And I feel like, especially with IEPs, I never had an IEP because it was like, oh, all you could do is extend test time. And it's like, I don't need that. I need someone to make a PowerPoint with like taking me through these things. So I really think building an educational system that helps autistic people, that doesn't separate them from the general population of schools. And I believe that to be true for everyone. I don't think there should be any separation of people, because from an early age, these kids are taught that there is something different with you, and more so that there's something wrong with you. And so that's number one. Number two, in terms of developing it, I know I mentioned in our emails that I've been doing museum education. I think being in an environment in Manhattan, for example, where someone like me who does not mask, is unashamed of their identity, I think kids being able to see that if they're feeling the same way I might have felt, to be able to relate to me, to be able to see an older person that is successful despite it all. I think that's the most important thing to me, is to just show that, like, no matter what anybody says, you just keep pushing and you keep doing it, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The world isn't designed for people like me, for neurodivergent people. And I think all we can do is assert ourselves in these spaces where people aren't openly autistic, people aren't openly divergent, neurodivergent. The only way to really create that change is to assert that and to normalize it, and to just it integrate everyone. I really think that it comes down to a point where, especially me as a developing young adult, where you realize how much of your experiences are shaped by the negative stereotypes and connotations associated with people like you. So I really think just normalizing it and stop treating it like it's a disease or something.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I feel like if we could get there overnight, we'd have a much better world. And if we can even take steps to get in the right direction, that's going to be a win. I mean, just even the idea of inclusion. Inclusion doesn't mean that we're in the same space. It means we have the same opportunity. How do you get there? How do you give people the same opportunity? How do you individualize, like you just said, to be able to help somebody be empowered in the environment that they can now be a leader in that environment? It's so hard, but we need to start making those steps instead of just talking about it. Actionable items need to be put in place. And Kristen, can you finish us off here? Because I mean, the development of a program and then where it goes next. It's oftentimes the hard part, is that you can create something and it exists in Long Island. It exists in a space, but I mean, the ultimate goal of a creator is that you create something that takes off and everybody has the chance to be able to use those same skills. What is it that you see that where we should be going next?
So building on all the wonderful ideas everyone had, one key area I think is in higher education. So in training clinicians, neurodivergent clinicians, to spark that type of change in the schools that he is talking about, and neurodivergent policymakers to call for the types of policy changes we need. So that what we have here in this very small scale is something that exists in the UK. It's just part of their funding policy. They have a specialist mentor policy where if you check a little box and you're autistic, you can have a mentor, and 30% of the mentors are autistic. So we need policy changes in the United States. And then my other key interest is in terms of non-speaking people and people like in District 75, which is the highest support needs in New York City. So mentorship programs to help people who don't speak or who have high support needs transition into college if they want to go there, or into trade or other employment if they want to go there. So really focusing on the full diversity of the spectrum. We're actually focusing on a broader spectrum of the spectrum than a lot of supports. A lot of them are just focusing very narrowly, but we're missing a huge number of people, and the people we're missing are the people who probably most need supports. So those are the key areas where I'd like to see change.
Yeah, I mean, and just hearing from all four of you all, it's ultimately is that there's a lot of places that we could be going, getting better, strengthening, but it's going to take a community, it's going to take resources. And for those resources, oftentimes it's family advocacy, it's individual advocacy that's going to get there. Kristen, where can folks go to get the resources for understanding what it is that you all are working on, but also understanding how to be able to get to that next step, how to develop mentorships, how to develop these relationships? Do you have places that you would suggest that families or individuals go to access those resources?
So a key source of resources is the College Autism Network, which was started by someone who now has realized that he's autistic, Brad Cox and Brett Nachman. And it's a resource of people around the world bringing together resources. So that's a key area. They also have a summit, the College Autism Summit. We also post all of our training materials and stuff on ResearchGate. So those are key areas. And you could look for the early ideas stuff that Wendy has done. But there's definitely a need for more open access resources. This is a key area in autism supports that's a big issue. When I try to teach about autism supports, there's often not a lot of stuff that's made open access. So this is also a call to the field to, if you're developing supports, particularly with federal funding, try to make them open access so other people can use them too.
Well, I mean, just having this conversation alone as a resource and being able to kind of talk about it and have folks be able to be exposed to some of the things that they should be thinking about or some of the ideas that they need to be considering. So I appreciate each and one of you individually for coming on and educating me. And hopefully I can continue that echo chamber of being able to help inform others and get that groundswell of folks who are saying, hey, we need to do something slightly different. So thank you for coming on the podcast today. And I look forward to seeing all the work that you did and all the work that you are doing continue to evolve.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you for listening to Autism Weekly. We hope you tune back in next week to learn more about autism in the real world. Autism Weekly is now found on all the major listening apps, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. Subscribe to be notified when we post a new podcast. Autism Weekly is produced by ABS Kids. ABS Kids is proud to provide diagnostic assessments and ABA therapy to children with developmental delays like autism spectrum disorder. You can learn more about ABS Kids and the Autism Weekly podcast by visiting abskids.com. Thanks for tuning in. See you again next week.